the fermentation product, we've got a plant product, a forage product, and a livestock product. There's a wholesale and retail division, and we do national and international sales to some extent. That's not a big part of our business right now. But traditionally, if we look at harvesting hay, we always wait for good weather. We swath the hay. We hope the weather holds while we're drying. And we wait for dew, and then we bale hay. And if any treatment on the hay occurs, traditionally, it's always at the baler. So the problem with that is it increases the dry down. It increases the time the crop's on the field. We can get bad weather. It increases traffic damage. We increase windrow damage. We have a tougher hay. It increases dry matter loss due to leaf loss. We have decreased nutrient density because of that. It decreases the visual quality. We get more bleaching, and it decreases the market value and decreases animal performance. So we feel that solution is DynaCure, and we apply 6 to 9 ounces per ton. We mix that with water, and a gallon will treat 14 to 21 tons, depending on how we set that up. This is the real key, I think. A lot of times we wait for hay to get really dry, but with small squares, we can bale between 17 and 22 ounce from 15 to 20, and large squares right up to 20. Now, if you have questions, go ahead and speak up, guys. This is just a quick slide showing our different tanks. This is our 75-gallon belly mount. This is a 25-gallon side mount. We also, right here, that's a 50-gallon. The 25 and the 50 can go on that right-hand side of a swather. This is the new weight on a pull type. This works, but that fill cap's a long ways up, and I either come up with this side saddle mount. And I normally put nozzles in the deck, although we can go right behind the roller. I'm going to cover this later. This is the forage calculator. This figures all the pressures that you need to set up with. So that technology was actually discovered in the 1970s. It's been sold by Pacer Technology for this is the 34th year. DynaCure is an advanced hay conditioner. It's proven very successful. It's applied at the swather, and I think that's huge in that it differentiates us from the competition. Benefits: improved dry down. I'll show you that. It increases yield generally due to leaf retention. It increases nutrient density. We decrease mold and heat damage. That increases profitability. It is OMRI listed. Here's a short video that I think you'll find very interesting.
Yeah. Anything else, Mark, or just the safety, simplicity, leaf retention?
Can everybody hear this okay?
The extra baling time is so big to me because I'm a little nervous anyway. And where I had a 2-hour window before, now if I've got a 3 or 3.5 hour window, it just makes all the difference in the world. You just can get that much more done that day and less the next day. You can put up more acres per day. So It's all a benefit.
Well, Mark, thank you. And if you need any other help or support, you give us a call.
I will.
Thanks, Mark.
A real key with DynaCure is it works in dry climates and in wet weather, humid climates. And I found a neat little short video that kind of demonstrates different drought situations. Even up here in Ohio, we get some dry areas at times. This is going from August of 1999 to June of 21. I found this kind of interesting myself when I found this. I actually had to slow this down a little bit. It was going so fast you couldn't hardly make things out. So the reason I had that put that video up is to show that our conditions change even though we might be in the same area. So right now, let's look at what we do in dry environments, which would be Monty down in Texas. This is a summary of 23 different nutrient analysis with and without DynaCure. And if we blow that up, they're baling around 10% moisture. Generally, we're going to dry down quicker. The DynaCure treated hay was about 4/10 drier, but our crude protein is 6/10 higher. That's leaf retention. If you look at ADF, NDF, and TDN, those were all approved. And on average, this doesn't happen every time, but on average, our relative feed value is 10 points higher. So here's a trial that was done in 2009. This is out out west, and you can see they're baling at about 7.5 moisture, but our crude protein is quite a little higher. ADF and NDF are higher, and relative feed value is about 9 units higher. This is a trial out of Gooding, Idaho. I believe this was 2010. It's a 20-acre patch. Our yield increase was 300 pounds. Relative feed value was 21 units higher. Again, we're 4/10 drier. And if you look at your return per acre at $85 for the DynaCure treated hay with a higher RFV and $75 for the non-treated, we picked up about $26.55 an acre. This is the same farm, and this is all first cutting, smaller patch, picked up 542 pounds more per acre. Our relative feed value was not that much different, so the pricing is the same. But again, we're 10 units higher, but we had just shy of a $22 increase in return per acre. Now this is there's the ROIs, excuse me, 3.1 and 1.7. This is second crop, same piece. Now, obviously, when they don't show this, our nutrient values were about the same, but we picked up 760 pounds more per acre, pricing at $80 a ton. Back then, which I know that's low right now, they picked up $30 an acre more. On that second piece, second cutting, 264 pounds per acre, about $10.50 return. ROIs were 2.9 and 1.2. So if we summarize all those trials, there's 28 different trials. We improved nutrient density. We improved RFV by 10.5. On average, there was just shy of 500 pounds more per acre. We increased yields in very dry conditions. The reason I want to show you this is a lot of times your producers, when things are dry, they don't use DynaCure. Why? Because their hay is drying down quick enough. But that's when we may actually make them more money in those dry conditions by increasing that yield coming out of the field. We do hang on to leaf. On average, we decreased hay moisture at baling by 4 units. Our average return per acre was 22.29. Gives us an average return on investment of 2.2. Now let's look at DynaCure in wet and humid conditions. And I ran a series of trials up in South Dakota in 2000 or 2020. And basically, this is the best trial that I ran, but we were baling at about 2.5 units drier. Crude protein was over 1% higher. ADF was improved. NDF digestion was improved. Relative feed value was improved by 10 points. And we picked up 107 pounds per acre. Look at the moistures we were baling at. Now, these are higher than our recommendations, and I find that producers do. They find out how far they can push things. We had a rain event coming in, and the producer decided to go ahead and bale. Picked up $22.60 more per acre. Here's some dry down. I actually used a windrow tester in this area here, and I was actually testing windrows. You can see we started out wetter with the treated, ended up lower, then we bounced, part of that sampling air. But this is actually nutrient analysis here, and you can see that we are drier. So we are 2.5 units drier at baling according to the windrow tester. The next, or right here, excuse me. But the next day we were 4.7 higher. The other thing we do is we decrease temperature. So at baling, we were 1.5 degrees lower. So right at baling, I marked bales, followed. So then I used just a moisture tester to test the temperature. But the next day we're 4.5 degrees lower. And this doesn't seem like much, but it's like a slow cooker. You take a 4.5 degree decrease in temperature over 30, 40 days, maybe longer, depending on storage. And we can cook out a lot of those nutrients. So, but we do tend to be cooler. So in summary, we increased the tonnage by 157 pounds per acre. Return per acre was at 2262. We improved dry down. We improved nutrient density. We decreased that temperature at baling. We had an ROI of 3. So if I summarize all five trials, come on, let's go. I improved moisture dry down by an average of 3.8. I increased yield by 160 pounds per acre. My DynaCure increased relative feed value only by 105. The interesting thing was at the end of 30, 40 days, my nutrient values were higher. I improved return per acre by 1342. DynaCure had a 2.4 average ROI. DynaCure seemed to decrease nutrient losses during storage, and we did win every trial. So benefits of baling with DynaCure: we improved dry down. We decrease bale moisture, we decrease mold, heating, we improve nutrient density, and we increase the yield, and we increase profitability. Some other benefits of baling with DynaCure: if we bale a little wetter, we do both the dry down, and if we do bale a little wetter, we decrease the time that crop's on there, which decreases the exposure to bad weather. We decrease traffic damage. We decrease windrow damage. And you can see right here, this is one of my trials. You can see my marked bales. But you know, this right here where there was no hay or nothing laying on it, that's where our best yield is going to be. But these areas here, we end up with decreased yield. And we decrease coarseness. You're going to have a softer, better textured hay. We increase visual quality. This is some small squares. These were the bales on the outside of the stack. That was a beautiful bunch of hay. We increase animal performance. We increase yield and quality during the drought. So right here is, do we decrease mold? You can see right here the control. Mold at, well, when I sampled after in storage for quite a while, mold was 450,000 units here. Here's our baling moisture. Here's our moisture on 10.4, and here's yeast. You can see we dramatically decreased, even though we were baling quite a little bit wetter. We significantly decreased mold. Yeast will generally go up, and that's not always bad in that, well, we use yeast to make beer, but you will see yeast counts go up. Here's another one. You can see the control. We cut mold in about half, and we still increase yeast count. Now this is on rye hay, but we see the same thing. We decrease mold by about half. We see a slight increase in yeast. We give you some rain protection. You can see this producer had about 1.5 inches of rain. This is down in that Oklahoma panhandle. And that's actually a picture of the hay, this picture right here. But you can see he's got some good color in his hay.
But the DynaCure product, we used the first year, we had some, we were gonna dry bale. And so he went, he mowed a farm, that we were gonna dry bale and then gonna switch, when he ran out, switch to the DynaSile. So the second field, he was split half and half. And when we went to bale it, the DynaCure part, remember, this was all mowed within half an hour of each other. The DynaCure part ended up being 5 points drier than the DynaSile. So where we actually use the DynaCure is if we have tough drying conditions like late sale, we put the DynaCure. Or early, if we were gonna make hay, late April, 1st of May, and it's cool and hard to dry, we'll put the DynaCure on, not the DynaSile. That's kind of what we use it for in that respect. A little different than what it's labeled for, but it works.
So that was Scott Meyer from Ohio and how they use the DynaCure. They put up their hay, they wrap just about all of it. So he's using more of the DynaSile. DynaSiles apply to 2 ounces on corn silage and grass silage. The thing we need to be careful about when we're doing haylage is I've seen guys put up wrapped alfalfa at upper 30 range for moisture. And is that wet hay or is that dry silage? And we make a comment in here, in tough conditions, we need to apply 4 ounces. In fact, I'd even go 6 when I get to that low range. So we need to increase that.
First couple of years there, we split the stuff, partly because the first couple of years we had 2 mowers, 1 mower and a half. So we could split. See. Not allowing them to grow. Better than what I get. That's probably take that.
That's the presentation, guys. Went through it fast. Questions?
When you said 150 pounds per acre, are you talking about all 3 cuttings
No,
combination or just
no,
one
per cutting.
per cutting? Okay.
Cutting. Yep, those are all per cuttings. Granted, if we do first cutting and we're baling dry, I mean, our tonnage is higher, so we're probably going to have a higher increase in yield than we are last cutting if we're down around a ton per acre. That makes sense?
Okay. Why the extra leaf retention? I'm just curious about that.
Good question. Don't know for sure. You know, we're about a $20 million a year company, and we don't have that extra $1 million or $2 million to actually dive into that yet. I think there's a lot of interplay with what's going on, and this is supposition more than anything. You've got endophytic and epiphytic bacteria on that plant, okay? We are a plant stimulant also, so there's sister products, so we've got some of that. I don't know if it's due to bacterial action. We've actually got bacteria in between the cells and then on the outside. And if you look at the lactobacillus counts, it's huge. It's huge on any plant, corn silage, anything. And we're stimulating that bacterial activity. I think that's why we get the mold decrease. But we've got study after study after study and producer comments about the increased leaf retention. Even when we don't show, and this is the confusing part, even when we don't show a big nutrient difference, which you would expect due to leaf capture, And that could be testing. There could be a lot of variables in that. We still tend to show a yield increase.
Can you use this on bunkers? Like if you put feed in the bunk to keep from heating up?
I would use the DynaSile for that, but yes. Uh,
Okay.
With green chop, that's a problem. A lot of guys will go out and chop green chop in the morning if they're
So
short.
I'm talking about silage, not I like corn silage and stuff.
Yep, same thing. We will decrease the heating. I had a gentleman up in South Dakota, a nutritionist, using the product. And he'd go out and test hay, and he was amazed at how much cooler it was. But even going back to the green chop analogy, guys will go out and green chop in the morning, and they'll do enough for that evening feeding. Well, then they get a lot of heating, which decreases intake. And if they treat that when they're chopping, they don't get near that heating later in the day. They've got a cooler, nicer product. So it all ties together. But yes, we will be cooler in haylage also. Whether you wrap it or put it in a pile.
I'm curious on the applicator. You said that can you mount on disc spines, full-type disc spines very easily, or is that somewhat difficult to do and get the nozzle spray pattern right?
No, it's easily done. It's not a problem at all. I've yet to find an application where we can't figure out how to get the product on at the cutter. The one I do like to talk about is a horse drawn out in New York or Pennsylvania. I never saw this, but I heard about it. He had a battery hookup, but he was actually pulling this cutter with a horse, and he was applying product. So.
Okay.
What does an applicator cost approximately?
That applicator is going to cost, a 25 is going to run retail, I believe around 700. The 50 gallon is going to be 800, and the 75 gallon retails for 1,060. Now there is a parts kit that comes with that. That's around 160 bucks. And then if you want the dial switch so you can control the pressure from in the cab, we can do, that's another 160, 70 bucks. So we're in that range. So even on that 75 gallon on a retail basis for around 1,400 bucks, you got the whole unit. Now, the one thing you can tell guys, and I will back you up on this, if they buy the equipment and say, no, it don't work, I don't want it, we'll take the equipment back. We'll work the money backwards through the system. I'll discount it 10%, but I'm not, like John Kelly, the owner, said, we're not going to stick people with the equipment that they're not going to use. But generally, that's never a problem. Would you like to see how we go ahead and can everybody see my 4-H calculator?
Yep.
So here's an example. They're going along at 12 miles an hour. It's a 16-foot header. I'm going to change this. 3-ton first cutting. We apply 32 ounces of mixed product per ton of hay, 1 quart. And I'm in there at a 9-ounce rate of DynaCure per ton of hay. That's a 25 gallon applicator. So I come down here, and this is pushing the system with 3 nozzles. I use the one at the TX6 or a TK05 nozzle. And I'm going to set the pressure at 38. Okay. This 6 nozzle setup, that is for your triple cutters, 3 10-foot units. And I'd use my yellow, my TX3, and I'm going to set that pressure at 38. Now I can come in here. Let's change this to 6. You notice right here, my mixing directions change.
I like that.
Okay. I can come in here if I put in a 75-gallon applicator. Here's my mixing directions. My pressures don't change. Now let's look at last cutting. You see how my pressures change? Mixing directions won't change. I'm still at that 6-ounce rate. Now, if I'm set up with 3 nozzles, which typically on a 16-foot header is what we'd end up doing, I can set my pressure at 16, but probably a better option is right here. I'm going to have 2 nozzles. I'm going to put a blank in the middle, and I'm going to run the 2 outside nozzles. Does that make sense? So if I've got a gentleman that I'm going to sell a unit, I will come in here and I'll ask him, okay, guy, first cutting and a really good yield, what's a really good yield for you? And he says 3, okay? So now, so I'm right here. And here's what I'm trying to do actually is, you know, he's going to be able to cover 33 acres with a 25. Well, if he's got 200 acres, that's not going to work on first cutting. Now I'm at 67. If he's got a belly mount 75, okay, now he can fill up twice. So what I'm trying to do is gauge the size applicator that he wants. Am I making sense or confusing? Here's the acres he's going to cover. Basically, in a nutshell, a 25-gallon tank will cover it will do 100 ton. The 50-gallon tank is going to cover 200 ton, and the 75 is going to cover 300 ton in a shot. Right here. If I put in 50, there's the 200. I do the 25. So I use this a lot of different ways, and here's the other way it's used. I'm only going to do let's make this easy. I'm only going to do 50 ton. There's 50 ton of hay. Here's your new mixing directions. I've got an organic guy up north of me here, and they're using the 4-H calculator, and this is how they're using it. I'm going to pop this to 9 just for changes my mixing directions. And that's what they're doing. If they've only got X number of ton of hay to do, they're using this to figure out where they want to be for tons treated. And they're telling me they generally run out of product on the last round. They carry a 2.5 gallon jug of water with them. It's a DynaSile jug, 2.5 gallon jug. They stop the windrower, they're self-propels, they pour in the 2.5 gallons and they keep spraying, and now the equipment's all flushed before they ever pull into the yard. That is important for a couple of different reasons. Number one is DynaSile is a very potent microbial stimulator. If you have bacteria in your water supply that wants to make slime, we will make slime. With these small nozzles and 100 mesh screens, you do not want slime. If that's an issue, 1 cup of Clorox bleach per 25 gallons of solution should eliminate that problem. Generally, if guys leave product in the applicator from one day to the next, it's not an issue. There are a very, very, very few people that can leave solution in that mix from one cutting to the next. Not recommended. I would go ahead and clean that tank out. Clorox will not hurt our product because we are not a live cell product. There are no cells in our product. Our mode of action is totally different. I'm gonna use a corn silage analogy. Remember I talked about on a corn silage, on corn, standing corn, there's huge amounts of lactonatural occurring lactobacillus. If I use a traditional treatment, I come in and I add a little bit of a live microbe in that great big bunch of lactobacillus. That live inoculant needs to grow and produce what the growth factors to make that silage inoculant work. We're doing all that in the vat. We're providing all those metabolites and growth stimulants already there. So when we come into that big pile of lactobacillus, we're going to stimulate it right away. We don't have to wait for a little bit of a live product to grow and produce whatever growth factors that they produce to make things work. Technology works somewhat also with why it works on alfalfa. Is there a question? Okay. Any more questions on this forage calculator? You notice we do have your logo on that. So you guys are all open to this. And the way most guys do this, I'm on Office 365. So I can pull that down on my phone through the cloud. Okay. So you get this and you get a customer, they've got a computer, go ahead and send them this. If they're on Office 365 and have employees, those employees can pull this right down on their phone. You know, all of a sudden it's rougher than what we can do at this 12 miles an hour. I'm still sharing, yeah. So I can only go 8 miles an hour. All they got to do is adjust the pressure. And that's how it's being used. I am always open as backup to you guys with a phone call from your customers to run this for them. And that does happen. Part of the reason I developed this is if you get a whole bunch of customers, you don't want them calling every time they go from field to field to know those pressures. I mean, we're always there for service, but this helps decrease our service load and we're still servicing them. And if they're having troubles, they'll give you a call, they'll give me a call, and we run the forage calculator. That last video with Scott Myers, all of his employees have this on their phone so they can adjust in the field on the go. You need to be on Office 365 so you can pull it down out of the cloud. Questions?
Yeah, questions from anybody?
Oh, what was the cost per ton approximately?
We actually, on our latest price list, we've added the DynaCure and DynaSile to the price
Okay.
list. So I figured that comes out to just over $4 a ton for your treating, right? Because you're doing 100 tons for a case, something like that.
Yeah, that's at the low rate, right?
Yeah. So it kind of starts from there.
But we're looking at the 6-ounce rate, we're looking at $3.89 a ton. At the 9-ounce rate, we're looking at $5.83. Now, is anybody using Prop out there? Do we know what the cost is on Prop? I don't have a current cost.
Yeah, Jim, you sell some of it. Do you know what it runs?
I will have current prices next month.
Or what's it been this
It-
past year?
It's all over the board right now, but I
Okay.
wait till I will have for Volac, I will have current prices next month.
Yeah, I know the big guys, if you can buy a semi-load Prop's a lot cheaper. But for a lot of the guys, like I say, $1 a pound, I don't think's out of line for a smaller guy, is it, Gary?
Yeah, because I'm using like a 68%.
Okay, but if we use $1 a pound, and if you go to the university research, they talk 1% of bale weight. On a 1,500-pound round bale, that's $15. Now, I'm not saying guys are all using that 1% rate, but I mean, that's what the universities are saying we should be using. Even if you're just using 4 pounds, which we're gonna compete even better than 4 pounds of pro per ton of hay. We're still looking at $4 a ton, and at our low rate, we're at $3.89. So economically, against most of the prop is the biggest competitor we have out there. I mean, we compete. And I
Yeah,
think,
then I know for so many of our guys, they're working with the organic growers, and it's great that this is Omri listed, and
All right.
you've been involved in organics for, quite a while. And I know there's just not that many, good products on the market for organic.
Well, you also, you gotta look at this. This is good. The way I look at it, it's good for the conventional size too. So
Yeah, yep, works great either way.
as I talk to him later on, I probably be making a lot of phone calls because I got before I go out and talk about the other products, I'll probably be talking more about this product.
the other thing too, that I didn't point out, we need to think about this. If I don't care what you're applying at the baler for hay treatment. There's really only 2 things we're trying to accomplish. Decreasing heat damage,
Right.
okay? If you use DynaCure at the baler, which they can do, basically all we're going to really accomplish is decreasing heat, mold, and damage. Remember all those benefits I talked about: green protection, rain protection, increased yield. We're going to decrease mold even earlier. You don't get those benefits going on at the baler. You only get those if you go on at the swather. The decrease in dry down, on average in my 5 trials in South Dakota, our dry down was 8% quicker. I've had guys say they're baling a day earlier. That's huge. You don't get that if you apply at the baler. The other thing it's going to do from a marketing point of view for you guys, who else is applying anything for treatment at the baler or at the swather? There's really not. So it gives us a huge advantage. Can you guys all see this DynaCure best practices?
Yep.
This is something I think that was sent to you. The applicators and also placement can go behind the rollers or placed in the deck header. Now, that parts kit that will be sent out if you order that, and you should, is going to be set up to put the nozzles behind the roller. The way I have, and I've been doing this for 16, 17 years now, I always place my nozzles in the header deck. And if you think about it, and I don't really care how it's done, it works either way. But if I'm putting behind on the rollers, spraying behind the rollers, I've got 2 nozzles and I'm spraying on the top of that windrow as it comes out. And when I explain that versus if I go under the deck, and these are fine hollow cone misters, and I get all that mixing action under the deck, and then as it goes through the roller, it gets squished down and it gets on the backside of that roller and it goes. Just about every producer I talk to prefers under the deck because they get better mixing. Now, I have to drill 2, 3, 4 holes in that deck, 5/8" holes, and I put the nozzle body through, screw the cap on, put the nut on. We're good to go. Occasionally I'll hear a guy say, well, they aren't going to want you to drill holes in that deck. The only place I ever hear that from is salespeople. I don't have problem. Producers don't care. And if they decide they don't want the equipment, I buy a flat-headed bolt. It's John Deere swather. I buy John Deere gray. I spray the bolt and I put it under there and they won't even know it's there. So it's not an issue either way, but it is something to think about. The parts kit is set up to go behind the roller. I will provide on the first go around, if you call me, I will send you nozzles and what we need to go under the deck. If you order a 75-gallon belly mount applicator, we need to know the model and model number of the swather, because the parts kits to attach that to the belly is all specific to the different swathers that are out there. Okay, everybody got that? Maintenance in season, storage, keep from extreme temperatures, especially freezing. I'm going to follow the company recommendations, but I'm not sure that's as big of a deal as what they talk about. Your grass haze, well, our dilution on alfalfa is 6 to 9. I'm recommending 3 to 6 on grass haze. Even on grass haze, the dust we see coming off the baler is not all dust we're kicking up with the header. I don't have numbers for the yield increase, but you're going to end up with a greener, nicer quality product on grass haze. I showed you the mole counts on rye hay. It's been used on forage, corn stalks. It's been used across the board. I've never run across a situation where we don't help the situation. Always shake that product. You're getting everything that's in the vat. You're getting all the cell wall material and everything. And as that sets in the jug, the cell wall material settles out. So shake that jug up before you dump it into the tank. If we've got irrigation, we recommend shutting that water off 5 days in advance. It helps reduce the moisture from the ground and dew, helps in raking. We can rake earlier too. That's another thing you can talk to your producers about. Raking schedule, they talk about that here. Beginning a day after swathing. Now, I mentioned that up in South Dakota, and the guys weren't really too crazy about that. Why? Because if they rake those windrows together and they get the wind they get up there, they got a mess. So that one you got to kind of play back and forth. Moisture content on DynaSile, 50 to 60 is 2 ounces, 40 to 50 is 4, 30 to 40 is 6 ounces. Now that's using DynaSile. That's the other thing too I should talk about. If I'm set up on the applicator to apply DynaCure for dry hay, if I'm putting up baleage, I'm going to switch from DynaCure to DynaSile, and I'm going to apply it when I'm cutting at the swather. Now I've got my hay treated. The silage inoculant actually starts to work before we start chopping, and it's just a cleaner deal. And you can use that forage calculator to determine where to set the pressure for the application rate. On dry hay, we're looking at the tonnage of the dry hay coming out of the field. In other words, second cutting, I'm going to do 2 tons to the acre dry hay coming out. That's what I use in the forage calculator. If I'm going to be doing haylage, I need to be using the wet tonnage. In other words, if I've got alfalfa haylage and it's going to do 4 tons to the acre wet, then I'm going to put 4 tons in that forage calculator. Okay, make sense? What happens when DynaCure treated hay gets rained on? If I get a reasonable rain on that hay, it's going to be better quality treated than untreated. Not as good as if it never rained on. That picture I showed you at the end of that presentation, where they got 1.5 inches of rain on that hay. When they sold that hay that next spring, Mike told me some of his customers didn't believe it got rained on. Now, I'm not going to tell you that's the way it is all the time, but that's what Mike told me some of his customers were saying. And why do I say reasonable rain? Do we get 3 days of misting where it really soaks all the way through that windrow? Does it come down quick? Does it come down slow? And I'm not going to tell you that 1.5 inches of rain is the right number. That's what that was down there. It could be a quarter of an inch, half inch, depending on how it comes down and how that windrow lies. On that video, and I've got the full videos, and you guys can have those too if you want them. And this was my doing, and some of my video doesn't work. It was my first experiment after I bought the equipment, and some of the videos not quite as good as I would like. But one thing I have told producers is you can narrow that windrow a little bit because we're getting better dry down, and that's what Randy did up around Flanders, South Dakota. And he mentions how he narrowed that windrow down, and he's not getting as much bleaching in his hay. How long is the product good for once I mix it? That all depends if slime occurs. If you got an unopened product at the end of the year, will it keep? Yes. Objective lugs will keep. You've probably got a 2 to 3 year shelf life. If I've got product in the tank and I drain it out into the jug, and that jug is full, put the cap on. You should be able to use that next year. If that jug is half full, you want to fill it up with water and get the air out of it, put the cap on. We don't always see a difference in relative feed value. Generally, we will, but we always tend to see an increase in yield. This has to do with irrigation. It's OMRI approved. Here's the OMRI listing, and I can get that for you if you want. There'll be another one come out in June of 2023. We've kind of covered the benefits. We've covered how to use it. 2 and 3 tie bales, 17 to 22 moisture, round bales 15 to 20, large squales at 20. Stem moisture is really what we're concerned about. Stem moisture is what drives mold. Our electronic monitored moistures do not measure stem moisture. This is just a schematic of the pump. 2550, 12 volts, pipe fittings. You get everything you need. And winter cleaning. Any questions on that?
We bought a tedder, and we basically pick up a day by tedding. So I probably don't, we just gain a little bit because we like to ted. We do gain about a day here in Minnesota by tedding.
Yeah, and your moisture's higher, so you probably don't have near the leaf shatter. And I've seen when that hay is really dry using the tedder, it may not be the best thing, but if you ted when it's wetter, you're going to be okay. But I think if you start using the DynaCure, the thing you'll need to watch is we're going to dry down a little quicker, but we're going to hang on to leaf too. So there's a play off there back and forth. Any questions on the label? We've got some handouts. Any questions on, this is a triple. In fact, this is Scott Myers. Triple right here. Now the trick is on the triple, and I don't have a picture, is where do you put the tank? That tank is right in this area back here. They had a beam going out the back. We mounted the tank there. The triples can be a little bit fun where you're just about going to have a shop guy that knows what he's doing to figure out to help us get that on. Here's a picture of a belly mount. The nice thing about the belly mount is that fill spout is right here. Where do I have it? Yeah, right here. That fill spout's clear up here. A lot of what I'm telling you guys is stuff I picked up from dealers, because this is the way I always traditionally did it. I picked up a new dealer and he said, well, why don't we have brackets made and we'll put those tanks right on the side. I can get you the measurements for those. I've got a set. They're not light. And I probably need to retail those. I'm even thinking here probably for around $200 a pop. Producers can make these, you can have them made. If you get pushed, I can ship you these that I've got, but that shipping with the weight's not gonna be a handy deal. Typically on the 25 and 50 on a self-propel, the tank's gonna go on the right side. You can see here where I've got nozzle, there's a nozzle here, and a nozzle in the middle. And then you'll need a little extra tubing for this as compared to going right behind the roller. Here's a picture. You can see this is a fine mist. A lot of times when I started this, producers, when I did this, they were worried about coverage. They're thinking about field application and getting that coverage over the ground. I don't care about coverage. The machine does all the mixing for me. I use nozzles to get the right gallons, ounces under the deck. That's the only reason I'm doing it. I'm using the nozzles to get the right application rate on the hay. Any questions on equipment where we would put it? Here's
This is John Daniel.
Yeah, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to share with the people that are on the here. Stephen has been a big help to me. I've been selling it for 2 years, and he's really supported what we're doing and working with the customers.
Thank you, John. Here's a picture of the brackets. And I can get you these measurements if you need them. And where these holes are at. I've had these modified because on a pull type, that drawbar, that tongue will vary in depth. And I've tried to make these as adaptable as I can to that situation. The benefits, sales tip, I've talked about the pro. I had one guy say, well, I'm already baling at 20 moisture and I'm not having any problems. I don't doubt it, but I use the analogy, if you had 20 moisture shell corn in a grain bin with no heat or air, would you be happy? And if I stack that 20 moisture hay in a big stack, I'm probably not going to be happy with it either. Why is my hair greener after rain? Now that I'm using Dyna, I get that question all the time. I don't know. Is it the epiphytic bacteria, endophytic? Direct mold enzymes, I don't know. We don't know as a company, but it's there.
So the question, do you put enzymes in this product?
No, we don't add anything. We've got a proprietary fermentation process. It's a lactobacillus fermentation.
Okay, I know what that is, yeah.
We stress the fermentation. We do some things different. We kill the product and you get everything that comes out of the vat. There's nothing added.
Okay, I was asking.
Okay. I talked about plugging nozzles. Clorox at 20 or 1 cup of Clorox for 25 gallons of mix. That means if I've got a 75-gallon applicator, I'm going to put 3 cups. Best place for the nozzles, you can have your pick. I prefer going under the deck. Offer both applications for the nozzles. And go from there. For the nozzles, they're the TX 2, 3, 4, and sometimes you might need a 1 or a 6. It is more palatable. Is it softer? Can I wrap? Yeah, here's the other thing. If I've treated to put up dry hay, and for some reason that producer decides, hey, the weather's coming, I'm going to put it up as haylage or baleage, but not use another silage treatment. There's no need. Our DynaCure and our DynaSile are sister products, so you're going to get some crossover. I would not spend the extra money to treat it. You're going to be fine at the higher rate with the DynaCure. And I think this is what Scott's found too.
Okay, all your product is liquid. Do you have anything like a granulated for people like some of the Amish guys got candy boxes and stuff?
That's an interesting, if they're organic, we'd have to have organic corn cob, which we don't have. But yes, we can do a dry product.
For the organic and the conventional side?
No, I doubt we'd be able to get we don't have the approval for the dry, and we'd have to get the organic corn cob, and we don't have that right now.
Okay, I just was asking a question.
Fine ground corn cob would be the carrier in our dry product.
Okay.
Okay. You know, here's, just common sense. The guy says, well, I don't have mold or heat damage. Well, that's not the only benefit you get from DynaCure. Here's a biggie, and this has cost me some sales. I am in a drought and my hay is drying quickly and I don't need DynaCure. The only time you don't need DynaCure in a drought is if it's so dry you don't have any crop to cut. If you're gonna be baling hay in a drought, we're gonna hang on to more leaf, and DynaCure may be worth more to you in a drought than in a normal situation, because we're gonna pick up that much more leaf retention. Here's just some other information. I talk about green protection. We're softer, more palatable. We do increase non-treated. Producers tend to see less dust coming off the baler. That's a comment I get a lot. Rain protection, I talk about reasonable rain. And I guess part of the reason too, to give you a little backstory, they had a guy that was really unhappy with DynaCure years back. Took me an hour and a half sitting on his hay, which was nothing but sticks. Finally told me what happened. It got rained on 5 times. Sorry, we're not a miracle worker. Okay, that's why I talk about reasonable. Nozzle placement under the deck or behind the rollers, applicator sizes, placement. You've got attached petitions, ordering, determine which applicator to order based on the largest field and the highest tonnage. Always order a parts kit. Parts kits are set up for put nozzles behind the roller. I will provide nozzles for under the deck application. Call me. Recommended moisture levels. DynaCure has been sexually used on corn stalks, forage sorghum, hay, and most dry forages. And we talk about the forage calculator. That is kind of the extent that I've got, guys. I'm open for questions.